Hey folks, good morning. Eric Mashinsky, Gold Investment Letter. It is Wednesday, the 20th of November. I wanted to put a brief video out. I'll email this to everybody. Thanks for everybody who subscribes to the YouTube channel. You will and have seen intermittent content that comes up that never goes out to the email list. And I try to make that of value occasionally. So please do subscribe if you're, somebody who likes what we're putting out. We have a situation. I want to talk really briefly about just a few different companies, and I'm going to save my commentary on the overall market with gold and the miners for a separate piece. But I did want to talk about where we have had some movement recently in some of the companies that we cover closely, one of which has been a big shocker on the downside, and that was I-80 last week, which just took a bath. The thing just opened up with a massive gap down on news that, from my understanding, and after reading that thing, I don't blame anybody for dumping their stock in a fever because the way that it was worded was terrible. That said, I mean, just worded in a sense that they've changed essentially the entire plan that was in place from previous management, which is fine, but you piecemeal these things to the street, and you don't start talking about production in the 2030s, as like a feature in the first part of setting the tone of a press release. We've known that I-80 has had to do some balance sheet rearranging, but they didn't announce that along with this huge makeover, and that I think was a big part of the issue. I don't believe they're going to have problems with getting the balance sheet in order, but it's undetermined, which is why this thing sold off so much. So I will say, if you look on, say, CanadianInsider.com or something, go check out IAU. The new CEO and the board have been buying a lot of stock since this thing cracked. They're very surprised by the reaction of the street and believe there's a lot of value here. I do too in the long term. The assets this company has in Nevada are extraordinary, but until we get clarity on how they're going to, fund everything that they're looking to do going forward, I'm not buying more. I just have I-80 and I've downgraded it to a hold. I bought a bit in the peak of the capitulation recently and was able to get some just under like 40 cents US, which I quickly flipped for a trade for 25% on a bounce within a couple of days. But the core position that I have sits tight, and I am going to hold that. I think in a worst case sort of scenario, we'll get back to, and we may very well see, there's a huge gap on the chart, which is around 90 cents US, which would then be around $1.30, I think, Canadian, $1.28, $1.30. We could see that gap. If that gap fills sooner than later, I may put an alert out to loosen some up, because there are companies where, in this case, a lot of people now have looked at it as dead money. And I'm not looking that short term at it. And when there's an opportunity to see this thing get divested at a multiple from where it is, which is what I exactly think that this new team is capable of doing. And with the assets they have, that's what will be done. The question becomes, in the short and interim term, where do we go? Does it bounce back quickly to higher than it is today and fills the gap, or does it end up having a long sort of new basing period, which is what my guess would be? And in that case, then we'll see what happens in terms of taking some money off the table. If I'm looking at it from a lens of like reality skewed a little bit negatively and cautiously, I think we'll get 80% of our money back, 90% of our money back in the deal with a little bit of patience. If I look at it optimistically, we're going to get some signs to add a little bit more before the thing has action come back. Hopefully in 2025. I don't expect a ton in the next 5 weeks. So that's I-80. Unfortunate, caught me by surprise. Secondly, so I was wrong on I-80 to be featuring that too early before they had their house in order. My bad. Next I want to just touch on Phenom Resources, which This is an interesting situation, and I know a lot of you follow this with me. It's my largest shareholding, and we've got two components to this story, and one of the components that is a massive value proposition and probably an enormous value unlocking piece of their asset base is in vanadium, and there are three components to that. It's the largest, highest grade at surface primary vanadium asset in North America at Carlin in Nevada. We know that that's a PEA stage project. Probably, if there is going to be the next mine in the US that's a vanadium mine, it's going to be Carlin. There are still grants being applied for and things of that nature, but vanadium has been in the toilet for a couple of years. So, that said, we have this stake in MK Plus, which just got a $50 million financing package. I think that I still haven't heard back from Paul Cowley, the CEO, if we got a valuation on where that was, but my guess is that it's at least, 2.5, 3 times where it was when we got our 5% of the company, and they have anti-dilutive rights. It could be as much as a quadruple. So, if Phenom's sitting on a $20 million US asset, albeit, you know, illiquid per se. And that may not remain the case as this deal moves towards unicorn status and there becomes liquidity in the secondary market where Phenom could theoretically take some of that off. I mean, you're looking at a $28 million US market cap in Phenom. If you've got a 20 million asset, my guess is 15 to 20 million is what that MK Plus asset is worth. And with the new funding, that deal is exciting in terms of technological solid state battery breakthroughs with vanadium. So that is a big asset. And then we have, last but not least, this the patents and the processing technology, which is really built around one of the best metallurgists in the world, Mr. Dreisinger, who's on the advisory board at Phenom and has helped with 3 different patents of different types of material. The last one that we heard of is around petroleum coke processing, which I happen to believe that from what I've heard, from testing and things that have been done, I believe that they're going to tell the market what's been going on there. And that is what I had been sort of in the background very enthusiastic about, but we haven't seen a material, like, definitive agreement with a joint venture or a partner or anything. So I think that they've just been plugging along, improving numbers, results, but it's extremely impressive from what I've seen so far. And I believe that if we, I've encouraged actually recently the company to talk about what they can bring out into the public realm, what they should bring out into the public realm, which isn't a secret if you dig through the documents, but it's more of a color on what they've actually got. I mean, they've spent a few $100,000 on these third-party tests of processing. I believe there's been over 20 of them through SGS with very, 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 very compelling results that, could theoretically put Phenom and or their partners as the lowest cost vanadium producer in the world by 50%. That is the hope and the intention that can't be quoted until they get done with some more studies and even like a pre-feasibility. But when you're looking at a processing situation like this isn't going to be some huge cost of building a plant. Phenom's not going to finance that, but pre-feasibility study at a couple few $1,000,000 that could bring in offtake agreements from some of the biggest mining companies in the world, and then funding through various metrics, one of which could be the US government and or a very large conglomerate that we have interested in this technology. That could really boon things. But where we're at now with Phenom is the gold story is just front and center. And there's a tremendous amount of stuff going on here. I'll just say that, I'm expecting, based on the last press release, we're going to get more information from the Dobbin sampling at the surface level, which to me and to people that I've talked to, this is a new discovery, a deposit discovery in Nevada on the Carlin trend that could be very, very, very substantial. We're going to need to drill, but even with the surface results and trenching, I think some of these results, are going to get huge company attention if they haven't already. And it's a big one. It's a really big prospect. In fact, the entire portfolio that Phenom has compiled over the years, where you've even got the deep Carlin, the South Carlin gold targets, where there have been 16, 17 holes conducted over the last 4 years and haven't hit a feeder zone. That system, in the opinion of Dave Matheson, who's the main reason why I'm so deep in this deal on the gold side. He's a legend in the business. He's one of the best that ever has done it. And now we have 4 projects that are vetted from him. And South Carlin could be massive, but it's very expensive to drill that deep. Now they're drilling or have just drilled and are drilling Crescent Valley, a newer prospect, which they love. And, that also passed the metric of, if they're earlier stage, they have to have all the components and the ingredients so that if there is a discovery, it's going to be something meaningful and big and sizable, if not enormous. And, last but not least is King Solomon, which just some of the historical readings there and things. I mean, this is like, I think that Phenom Resources has like a mini I-80. And even though I-80 fell apart, that was a balance sheet scenario. And up until very recently, even now, it's still got over a 200 million US market capitalization value because they've got 4, very good gold assets in Nevada. Phenom, could start to mimic what that looked like in the earlier days of I-80, and I-80 is traded up to $600-700 million market cap. And Phenom certainly doesn't have any balance sheet issues. So let's see what happens. But I think it's going to be a massive year on the gold side in 2025. We're getting, we have the Dobbin second piece. We have Crescent Valley drill results pending. We probably have, I think, an update that could really excite the market on the vanadium technology side of things. And then plans for what is next in terms of getting out there they've got a permit Dobbin. It's going to take a little bit of time. King Solomon as well, but those are coming. And so the stock action, though, to me is interesting because we just at the end of October there 3 weeks ago hit an all-time high, closed at 59 cents Canadian. And all of a sudden, it's been like this straight down line. And up until a few days ago, there was really no volume on this. I think it just sort of had some momentum. It closed up there. And again, it looked like it was ready to go. And, it started to pull back. And, we might have had some Johnny come latelys or what have you that came in. And when it started to turn back, just decided to get out. I actually haven't been all that active. I was very active back in August, September, buying more Phenom. Every time this thing gets back or has gotten back into the high 30s, low 40s Canadian, I get my checkbook back out. I'm on the bids right now in the US and I'm going to buy more because to me, this is the area. I mean, it's been back up to 55 or higher 3 times since May. And one of these days, hopefully a lot sooner than later, we get a new breakout to highs. And this is going to be a whole different ball game for Phenom. But, in this range we've had, I wasn't expecting this to fall off this much, but it's time to buy on this buy side to me. You look at the support levels. I mean, we're looking at, I think worst case, you've got that 35, 36 cent Canadian. It's at 38 right now. And you may be bottoming out right here. So I'm back buying Phenom. That's what I can tell you. Last but not least, I just want to give a plug on one of the companies that I've talked about intermittently here with the free e-letter folks, and that's Metallis Resources. I cover this, more regularly in our premium and elite membership. We were a big part of the financing that happened recently at 13 cents. Our group, I have been extremely active back in this market as I've started to learn about what potentially is here at their Greyhound project in Idaho. I am not going to get into an in-depth piece right now about Metallis, and in fact, I'm going to do a piece just on Metallis, and they've got some pending things coming up as well that we know of, which are more silver and antimony assays coming from Greyhound. And I know that because of a lot of what they've seen and learned since they got started in the summer with their field programs and these results that are off the charts, just go look at the last couple press releases of what they're finding laying on the surface. And we look at Perpetua Resources, which is approaching $1 billion Canadian market cap. and has $1.8 billion in funding from the US government, from various agencies, including the US Pentagon, to accelerate permitting for just the antimony component of their gold antimony deposit. Now, they've got 5 million ounces of gold. So that's not something that Metallis has, but the early indications are with Metallis that they've got a very super special high grade silver, antimony, gold, and lead zinc, at least lead, but definitely silver, gold, antimony asset that is trading for nothing compared to Perpetua. And if they start to prove this out a little bit more, in fact, I'm aware of an introductory call that occurred last week with 4 agencies from the US government, because of the fact that even though this is early stage and there's a lot of work that has to be done, we are really desperate for locking up antimony supply. And you see that by how much money the government has thrown at the stibnite mine, which is the Perpetua situation. So I have gone into Metallis and now own nearly 3% of the company. And I believe this could be one of, if not the biggest firecrackers in the junior mining space in 2025. There's only one downside, which is that, you know, you could have some weather lulls on work like in Q1. But who cares? You know, this is the big picture on this thing. I've not seen anything like this with what they've gotten their hands on at this Greyhound property. It is very special. It's private property. They don't even need permits to drill. They can do what they want to do. Obviously, they'll play that wisely, but you know, this has been private property owned by the same family for 40 years, and the owners are essentially partners with Metallis on this, and there's just so much potential. It's incredible. And it's just a question of how quickly do they start to shock the market, I think, with some of what they believe that they know that they have based on some work that's been done historically. These things will have to be updated. But I believe, for example, when they can get out there and drill and have a program, probably in the spring, you want to be fully positioned by then. But even now, you know, while the stock is under 25 cents Canadian, I'm just letting everybody know. I believe that Metallis is a very strong buy. There is not a ton of stock left or trading under these levels, so you may have to chip away to get a position. But if you are a junior mining resource investor and you really can understand details of stories and have had some hits that have happened in a big way in the past, please take a close look at Metallis. Take a look at the last releases of this Greyhound asset and look into the antimony story. There's a company that's getting a lot of interest because they're buying up these old antimony mines in Europe, and their stock is worth way, you know, twice as much as Metallis. And I would gather to say that, you know, what Metallis has is just ridiculously much more incredibly valuable than any other company that's out there on the antimony story side, with the exception of US antimony, which has been out there for a long time, and that's a different ball game. So for exposure just to antimony, you certainly can get it there. But as far as something with such upside, finding these chunks of 0.5% to 4.5% stibnite, which is antimony, on your surface, when 1.8 billion went to Perpetua that has a 0.07% stibnite, aka antimony resource byproduct from their gold, is crazy. And there's so much upside on Metallis. So that's it for today, folks. Cheers.